I'm doing it with the assistance of this Starbucks that's sitting in here right now. So
Yeah,
good morning.
she just wired.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to have you all, and thank you for being here. It's a big day for our task force. So I'll frame it. It's really a pleasure to be here. I can't believe we have spent 2 years together. And that we are at this moment ready to go over our final recommendations. So just we will be talking more about just closing out this group. But Trace, I'll let you take over and help us get some business done.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everyone. I think about, well, yeah, I know there's a lot of folks showing up today in a lot of different spaces and just want to hold space for that and just really appreciate folks being here. You know, somehow the sun sort of rose again today and I was like, whose idea was it to task force? It wasn't mine. That's what I want to say. It was not my idea to have this closeout meeting today. That's the joke I'm gonna make. But just want to acknowledge that a lot of folks are showing up today in a lot of different spaces, and this is a space that holds space for all of those pieces. So thank you for being here, and thank you for sticking with us, and thank you for being here to close this out with us. As far as business goes, just want to acknowledge that we're going to have a number of, I think, pretty straightforward and simple summaries and minutes to approve, and including today. And so we're just going to hold off on that and send it as one final kind of slate for you all to approve asynchronously. I don't think we'll have any issues there because, again, the meetings that we are going to be sending in addition to today are just the meetings where you all reviewed the recommendations that you then voted on. So obviously those speak for themselves. So I don't think there's a lot of nuance there. But if anybody has an issue with that process, please just send me a note. But that's what you can expect via email. The second part is today, just for transparency purposes, because we're doing asynchronous voting, I just want to screen share with you and show you the results for each of the recommendations so you can see how they were voted on. So I'm literally just going to pull up in a non-pretty deck because what I have realized in other groups is that when you do asynchronous voting like this, I could technically say whatever I want to say about what passed or what didn't pass. So I'm just going to bring it up and show you, and we're going to walk through each directive. Should be pretty quick though. And then we would love to just hold some space for any sort of reflections that you all have or anything you want to share out as you think about what this group has done over the last nearly 2 years. And then Stephanie is going to close us out with some kind of thinking on what she sees as next steps and what she sees as what's to come. And then we'll get you out of here. So I do not anticipate very long at all, but I think it's important for us to have some sense of closure to this work, and we know this work isn't closed, but we know this task force is, and so just want to bring us in together today and remind ourselves who was at the table for this. And I know a number of you have relationships, and hopefully these relationships were deepened after this work together. So the work will continue, as we know. So with that said, any questions, comments, anything from my planning team, Doris, Brian, Stephanie, Kathy? Before I jump into sharing? Okay, great. All right, y'all. Well, I'm gonna play it like the doctor's office and start with the news, which is that every recommendation passed with majority. So I'm not gonna make you wait one by one. But that is the news, and all passed with a pretty clear margin. There was only one that had 25%. That was a no vote, but again, still receiving majority votes. So I will move through these pretty quickly. Um, Let me go ahead and bring it up. All right. So here's the back end of the form. We had 31 responses, and I believe we had 34 folks at the end of this. So that's pretty great. So really thankful for all of you for showing up and time and time again, but also voting. Oftentimes we are tracking people down one to one, which I did some this week. So thanks for answering my calls. And I'm pretty proud that we were able to get way more than majority for the voting here. So I'm just going to go one by one. I'm not going to go through the comments. Again, the comments will be taken for those that are no votes. So there were a couple people that commented when they had voted yes, those will not be included, just so you know, because otherwise we would just be sharing continued comments. If you voted no on something and you put a comment as to why or the framing, et cetera, that will be shared verbatim as an addendum to the report. So just wanted to remind folks of that. All right, so response one, again, we had two, Brian, was it two that were not recommendations? They were, we tagged them as responses.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this was one of the
Is this facing
responses.
your screen, Trace?
Yeah, can you not see my screen?
No.
Can other people
I
It's
see
sharing
it.
for me.
Okay, other people can see it.
Yeah, I can see it.
Strange.
Okay.
Okay.
You may need to change your view at the top to standard or to share to where you share the screen at the very top. And select Trace Faust's screen instead of meeting.
Kathy with the
Got
IT.
it. Thank you.
Love it. IT director, Kathy Wells, thank you.
I learned that the hard way.
All right, so response one received 100% yes of the 3131. Directive two, recommendation 2A. I'm not going to read through all of these, so 100%. Recommendation 2B, 96.8%, so that means we had one no vote here. Recommendation 3, 100%, 31 out of 31, yes. Recommendation 4A, 87%, so 27 yes, 4 no votes. 4B, 30 yes, 1 no. 4C, 100%. Recommendation 5, standardized training, 27 yes, 4 no's. Directive 6, timeliness, 80%, 25 yes, 6 no. Directive 7A, 23 yes, so 74.2%, 25%, 8 vote no. 7B, 87% yes, nearly 13%, so 4 no votes. Directive 8, response 8, so this is another one of our responses. We had 30 yes, and we had 1 abstention here. Just so as a heads up with our abstention, I'm going to follow up with you. We did request an abstention letter from folks. I don't think that at this point it's not going to shift the vote in any direction. I just want to clarify that you meant to abstain. So I will, just a heads up, I will follow up with you one-on-one, but we're good there. Recommendation 9, 29 votes yes, 2 votes no. Directive 10, 100%. Directive 11. Okay, so this is another 75% or 24 yes, 7 no. Recommendation 12, 30 yes, 1 no. Recommendation 13, 28 yes, 1 no, and 2 abstain. Recommendation 14, 28 yes, 2 abstain, 1 no. 15, 28 yes, 2 no, 1 abstain. Coming to the end, Directive 16A, 28 yes, 3 no's. 16B, all but 1. 16C, 100%. Directive 17, 30 yes, 1 no. Directive 18, 28 yes, 3 no. 19A, 100% yes. 19B, all but 1. And that is the end. We will send out the results from that as well to you all, just so you know. And of course, that'll be captured in the report as well. So just a note on the report before I hand it over to Doris for some kind of final reflections and thinking from folks. The report is due Jan 1. So obviously right around there is when you will receive the report. We'll be working hard with the CPO team to get that out on time. And as you all know, the recommendations, the voting, will be captured in that, as well as a narrative from the CPO and the Keystone side of just the process and how we got to where we did. And the recommendations, again, will be verbatim. The voting will be verbatim. And it will be, oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? We'll give attribution on the votes and the comments. So Jill, appreciate that clarification question. That will all be spelled out. If you have any issues with the process, again, as we've laid it out, let me know, reach out. But with that, Doris, want to hand it over to you to take us into, any thoughts that folks want to share.
Awesome, thank you. So Trace went through those recommendations really quickly, and we recognize what sits underneath it is many, many, many months of hard, vigilant work behind the scenes and with this group. And so, that is something certainly to be applauded. And I know that there was some love that was given in the chat, but wanted to make space with this being our wrap-up meeting for any closing reflections, any notes of gratitude, just as we've spent a lot of hours together. And some of us may feel a sense of withdrawal come 2 weeks from today. So wanted to really just make space for anyone who wants to share any closing reflections or remarks before we wrap up our conversation today and our work as a task force. Gina.
Same Doris, for sure. I'm so happy to have met you all virtually. Hope to run into you all in person sometime. I really want to express gratitude to everybody here for holding space for the journey and experiences of folks from communities like mine, where we don't often hear from that. I appreciate engaging in these kinds of tough conversations, the things that it has unpacked and unfolded, and questions that have floated to the top in terms of what safety looks like for kiddos in my community, in which we navigate a very different and complex system that this group in no way could have really tended to. But I appreciate it in all the ways that these decisions are going to impact some measures of that safety. But it has really prompted some important discussions for us in our community about what safety looks like for our kiddos. And my hope is to continue this work and to continue to bring forward measures to keep all of our children safe. But I just so genuinely want to thank everybody for holding space for my voice, for my experiences, for this perspective, and for all of the things that it chimed in me to ask more about in our community here, which all of our communities are driven by the people and families. So I'm really excited for that, and I appreciate meeting all of the different factions of what it means to keep kiddos safe and to keep our systems accountable. And I'll continue to do this work to meet you all there and make sure that we are hearing at least most voices that we want to hear from where we can. So thank you for all of that, and I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Gina. I really appreciate the connection or what you shared about not just the work that happened in the context of this task force on these Zoom calls hour after hour, but the work that happened outside of this space, the conversations that were had, the reflections that were that you brought into those conversations and sort of deepening the work on the ground while also doing this in some ways painstaking work in this group to arrive at some recommendations that could be transformative to mandatory reporting. So I appreciate that very much, Gina. Michelle?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. I mean, I think this has been, in my 30-year child welfare career, one of the best the best task force that I have ever been a part of. It's been just so well facilitated and managed. I really appreciated all the research that went in from Stephanie's office to pull together data from across the United States so that we could really have well-rounded information as we made decisions. It's been fascinating to sit on the task force working inside the child welfare system and really devoting my career to that work, and a task force that is looking to shift the way that this work is done. And it was done respectfully and professionally. And I cannot give enough kudos to Doris, to Jordan, to Brian, to Stephanie, to Kathy, to Trace, the amount of work that you all put into this to make this process easy. It did not feel like 2 years worth of work, and it was something that I was always looking forward to participating in and showing up in, and being given the space to also maybe speak conversely about at least trying to educate about how the child welfare system functions and providing that insight. So it has been an absolute honor and pleasure to be a part of this work, and I'm so thankful for the work that we've done. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Michelle. Jessica?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I just want to echo all of that and say a huge thank you to everybody at Keystone, everybody at CPO for all the hard work in this. I thought it was an amazing experience as well. I've sat on boards before, but never a legislative, like legislature directed task force. And I thought that this was really well done. Everybody, I felt like the voices were heard, the conversations were managed, the, difficult pieces, we got through. And I think it's amazing. And it was a really great experience. I just wanted to shout out for all the hard work everybody did, and say thank you for, on behalf of me and all the other lawyers for, dealing with our lawyer brains as well. But appreciated all the perspectives that we had here, and I learned so much. So it was just, I don't know, just a great part of my career, and I'm thankful for it.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Stephanie?
Yeah, I just want to join in, from my perspective. I have to just thank our ombudsman team. Fortunately for Jordan, she's had a new baby. Unfortunately for us, she is not here to sit with us on this final day. But I must thank Jordan, who has been on this ride with me since 2021. As we began to conceive of the brief that led to the legislation, which led to the task force, right? So it's been an extraordinarily long journey, and she has been the backbone of moving so much of this work forward before we even arrived here. And then, of course, was an instrumental part of the meetings and helping us pull together agendas and themes and all of that. I also, Brian, you're fantastic. Thank you. Your research brought this project to an extraordinarily different level than I have ever seen. And you have also created a standard by which we should all demand, by the way, as you march into other working groups and other task force. That is the level of information, the quality of information we should all be requesting before we're asked to make substantial decisions, right? So Brian, just thank you. You came in midstream and you hit the ground running, so thank you. And Trace and Doris and Keystone, we've got Addie here somewhere. You're great. Seriously, you made the trains run on time, but you did more than that. You encouraged us to think, you encouraged us to listen. You allowed us the space when people like myself, I probably said the same thing 15 times over, and you were patient with me, so thank you. But really, you are truly professionals. You are wonderful, and I felt that this environment that you created helped me learn. So thank you all. And to my co-chair, Kathy Wells, I have to say thank you. Kathy and I go back to practically childhood. I mean, I think we met when we were about 27. We won't talk about how old we are now. But we have been on a journey for a long time, and just it was a privilege to be on this one with you, and to have your background and expertise, and more than anything, your heart and your passion. So thank you. And lastly, I know it's like the Academy Awards. They're like, okay, wrap it up. 3 minutes is
You
done.
can right get the music, Stephanie.
That's right. But I do have to thank all of you. Again, I've had the ability to work with many of you over the 3 decades I've been in this business, and to be here with you has been a privilege to see how your minds work, what your experience, how it informs us. For those I did not know in advance, it has been, and I don't use this word lightly, it has been an honor. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for caring. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being here. 2 years of meetings is a lot of meetings. It's a lot of time, and you all came and you were truly present, like present, mind, right? Body, spirit. And I think I'll just say this, these task force meetings can be hard, but I will also say is that to sense your passion for the issues and the children and families we all serve, you helped me remember what the work is about, what it should always be about, and to keep showing up at the table, even when we're tired or busy or it's hard. Your passion fueled me. So I just want to thank you all really, and I don't exaggerate this. You are all remarkable humans, and we're grateful to have you in this Colorado community. And keep going, friends. Keep going.
Thank you, Stephanie. So there's lots of love in the chat. Folks reflecting on the amount of time and all that personally and professionally happens in 2 years' time, but also this recognition that it didn't feel like a drudgery. Lots of gratitude for the teams working behind the scenes, as well as in facilitating the conversations. Lots of gratitude for each other in the ability to listen and learn, and grapple with the hardness of being a professional in a space, and also being flexible to understand other perspectives and arrive at recommendations that the majority of you, the vast majority of you, felt good about. And so any other remarks that folks want to share out loud or in the chat? We welcome those. We want to make sure that we give ample space for folks to reflect on and share out their experience in this task force. Any gratitude or kudos that you want to give to each other, or any recommendations for continuing to improve our approaches to bringing folks together from different disciplines and perspectives to arrive at solutions that could be workable and folks feel good about. Crystal.
Sure, thank you. Thank you for letting me observe and be a part of this task force. You know, many jurisdictions across the nation are working on transforming mandated reporting. You guys got into some detail stuff that I don't know is going into, you know, a lot of other jurisdictions review, but big picture stuff is really undergoing a significant review and assessment in lots of jurisdictions. You guys have really shown a really wonderful cross-system way to approach this with good facilitation and leadership. I'm not going to do the Academy Awards, but I just want to say thank you for having work to show to other jurisdictions. This is going to be amazing. And I really want to particularly give a call out for 2 pieces of information that I think were very impactful for me and new knowledge. And one was the perspective of the domestic violence, intimate partner violence community, and the impact of the regulations on client safety. So that was really great insights for me. And also the really great research that was done on mandated reporters that have ever been charged or brought to court, and what a tiny impact, amount that was, because we hear about liability concerns everywhere, and that's why people over-report. And your real numbers about this over the course of a lot of years was, I think, very impactful. So at any rate, I just wanted to say thank you. There were many, many more things, and I appreciated looking at the impact on families of color, the over-reporting for that. So thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Crystal. And we have in the chat more acknowledgement of the impact of the research that Brian did in ensuring that the conversations weren't had in a vacuum, that there was some national perspective on what other states and jurisdictions were doing with respect to policies in these areas, and bringing that into the conversation to provide some reference points for this group to have deeper conversations. Any other comments or reflections that folks want to share, again, either in the chat or out loud? And just as I said that, Roshan's comment popped up. Thank you. I think you're in a different space too today, Roshan. A little acknowledgement of the dialogue and learning and being able to hear from the different perspectives. So that opportunity to listen and learn and collaborate and partner in, again, trying to find common resolution to these really challenging policy areas with respect to mandated reporting. Awesome, thank you.
I'm gonna jump in. I'll just speak from a personal perspective too, and professional. I think when I got kind of thrown onto this project very unexpectedly. It was actually only my second task force to ever take on. So I was learning as I flew building, what do you say? Building the plane as you
Building
fly
the
it?
plane as you fly it.
Alongside CPO. But coming in personally, like my background, I was a teacher who made a call because I didn't know what else to do, as a principal who watched impacts on families, and then I was a parent to a teenager who came to live with me right before COVID and stayed with me for 3 years, who talk about disproportionate impacts. She was a definition to a T across the board. And I was just really anxious, honestly, from a personal perspective of like how to balance the professional and the personal piece. Because my personal was honestly the most I had to draw from, more than the professional. And just want to say that y'all really raised the bar for me, because since this group has started, I'm now in like 10 different task forces across a variety of sectors. And this is my favorite group. And I'm not even just saying that, but because y'all show up, it's like pulling teeth in other groups to get people to talk, to get people to like wrestle, push, think, just be committed to the process, right? When I have to be like, all right, thank you for that, and back to what we were actually talking about. Those are tough spots to be in. So I just really want to say thank you, because I think it's certainly set the bar for me in facilitation spaces to really say, better as possible when we like listen and collaborate and work together and keep pushing. And I know the work continues. So just want to say thank you for all of this and letting me learn alongside you. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Trace. Donna, you must have been known that you were on my mind. I see that you just put something in the chat, just your gratitude for this group and doing this work. I actually have a thank you. Of course, this has been an amazing journey. I've appreciated the opportunity to be brought into this work, to work alongside Trace and the CPO. To what I think arrive at some really sound, transformative recommendations. I have a special gratitude for Donna in the, so we started out this task force, talking about disproportionality as a way of making sure that we use that in the conversation, that was sort of like our entry point in framing the rest of the work. And I will say that in some ways that thread as we're like mired in the detail of all of the directives, got lost in an explicit way. And so when we arrived at the draft recommendations that we were walking through and that we were really challenging and trying to refine, Donna provided that push to make sure that that early conversation was brought back into the recommendations. And that push is hard because over a 2-year period, it's easy for that thread to get lost, right? Like we get into the details and, trying to come up with language and, content. And somewhere along the way, it minimally got watered down, maximally sort of got lost in really explicit kinds of ways. And I appreciated Donna, and I feel like the many of you who chimed in as Donna was pushing us to go back to the language of the directive, to go back to the purpose of this task force and some of the challenges that the legislature wanted addressed, and making sure that that explicit focus was back in the recommendations. So I have much gratitude to Donna, in part, if not in large part, because I know when you are not a majority representative in a conversation like this, the weight of holding that and using your voice to raise that is exhausting. And so I want to acknowledge that. I want to name that. And I think that it made the recommendations ultimately not only better, but reflective of the intent of the legislature in standing up this task force. So thank you, Donna, for your voice and for your vigilance in making sure that we held true in an explicit way to the legislative mandate with regards to disparities and disproportionality in the child welfare system. So thank you. All right, so you're getting some more love in the chat, Miss Donna. Awesome. Any other reflections before I hand the mic back to Stephanie to close this out with some final remarks, and then I think we will wrap us up or get ready to wrap us up with some next steps. Margaret, I see your note calling out Stephanie's vision and tenacity. That almost goes without saying. And I applaud her intentionality around sort of sitting in many instances in a deliberate way to allow for the conversation to evolve, recognizing the weight that she holds by her position, both as the Child Protection Ombudsman as well as the co-chair of this group. And so I think it's masterful when one can, allow the space for the conversation to evolve and intentionally chime in when necessary. So I appreciated that, Stephanie. And also I think the vulnerability that comes with posing deep questions around, where there you want clarity of understanding and really sitting alongside the task force in this journey as not just a chair, but as a participant.
Yeah, Doris, I'm going to jump in. Sorry, with two more kind of, and I always get nervous in these spaces. Don't want it to be performative shout outs, but I also want to say what needs to be said. I think, Stephanie, I'll just add to that because I do think this needs to be said out loud. Well, one, I'm just going to say you're a badass and you know that. I wouldn't want to be on your bad side. Two, I have personally seen you be impacted by people's thinking and pushing and change direction based on how people are pushing. And that's just like that's a rare find at I think at your level in your space. And so I just appreciate your willingness to let your team flex and flow based on what you hear from folks. Cause I see a lot of leaders in these spaces who are just like, no, I'm not flexing. I'm not flowing. So I just want to call you out for that and say that it is a rare occurrence. And I really appreciate the way that you listen in these spaces. And then the last thing is I just want to kind of in the same vein of some things already shared. There are a number of folks in this task force with what we call lived experience. And I know that a number of those lived experiences here are in both professional and personal spaces. And so I just want to give a shout out for whatever that lived experience is that you brought to this table. I heard a lot of like vulnerability shared, both of people's lives, their children's lives, their professional lives. And it's just, I don't often get to be in those spaces where people just bring their full selves to the table. And I really appreciate that people felt comfortable enough to do that. And maybe there's no other way in this work than to bring your full self in that way. But I just want to shout out the vulnerability of the folks with that lived experience here, and your leadership in this. And we are always working to do a better job of integrating that lived experience into policy. And so thank you for showing up and doing the work. Because I think it's made a genuine difference in the outcomes of these recommendations. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Trace.
So Doris, I'm wondering, do we have any other?
I was pausing intentionally for
I
people
know
to
you
take
are.
a little bit more time
I just
before they
thought
chime
would-
in. The
Just
silence
wonder-
got uncomfortable, Trace.
Listen, I don't have as thick skin today, okay?
Fair. Just recognizing that some people take another beat before they feel the courage to chime in, or do I really want to say the thing? And so I was giving enough space to that before I handed the mic over to Stephanie. It has been an absolute pleasure walking along this journey with all of you. And as we know, the work continues. It continues on the ground. It will continue even after the recommendations are published, both in terms of the legislative actions that get taken up, the sort of on the ground kind of policy system building that gets taken up, and the work that happens day to day. And so I am grateful for your commitment to this point, but more importantly, your commitment to the work that happens outside of this space, that will happen outside of this task force, and look forward to watching from afar the transformation of mandatory reporting in Colorado. And with just deep gratitude of being a small part of this journey with all of you, and looking forward to see what evolves in the state with respect to this work. Stephanie?
Great. Thanks, Doris, and thanks, Trace. So next steps, right? That is frequently the question. Oftentimes, and I think many of us have experienced this, task force produce reports all the time. And if you look at the vast majority of them, which I've actually researched this, believe it or not, they sit on shelves and they gather dust. And that was something that our organization has never wanted to have happen to the work, which is why we go legislatively on these projects. And we started this project with Rep. Froelich and Representative Mary Young, who sponsored this bill and carried it, and have remained involved from the beginning. And the idea is, right, if you put something in legislation, if you fund it, if you value it, you'll fund it, and you will move forward with wherever this task force needs you to move forward. And I think that that's a powerful lesson for all of us. Is framework matters, structure matters, expectations matter, because they result in the kind of product that we've created here. I took a look at election results this morning, and fortunately, Representative Froelich has been reelected. She is engaged and she is ready to run legislation on this. Unless my research is terribly wrong, Representative Young was not reelected. She was in a really, really competitive seat. It was tight for a while. And then I woke up this morning and saw those results, which is unfortunate because she's been a true champion of this work, of child welfare. And I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge her. I have been in touch with her consistently, even up as early as last week. And she said that she would be more than willing to hold a bill title and make sure that any young freshman representatives that were coming in might be interested in this. And she would do all in her power to make sure that she provided another sponsor on this bill. Given the relationship that she and Rep. Froelich have, I have every belief that they will indeed figure out who the sponsors of this bill will be. But what I have been told is that there is a commitment. They have always been very supportive of this group. Not only did they sponsor the bill, of course, but I think it's important for you to know, when I've spoken to them, they're like, look, we asked a group of citizens, 33 of them to be exact, to come together for 2 years and volunteer their time and their energy and their expertise and their experiences. And we absolutely need to be there at the finish line to keep, carry the baton to the next level. So one, we do have legislative support and commitment to incorporating these recommendations. Two, there are, as you all know, really different recommendations here. I can put them into sort of two baskets very generally. And the first basket is what I would say are technical amendments to the law, right? Those are those recommendations about what does the word immediately mean? The task force says it's no less than 24 hours, right? Or up to 24 hours. Or should a response or a mandated reporter delegate their responsibility, or can they, to another person? This task force said no, right? So all those statutory issues that were actually identified in our brief several years ago are holes that will be plugged by the language of this task force. And I think you can absolutely expect those statutory revisions to be done. The harder pieces, and you'll have to excuse me, I'm sorry, I've had a cold, are those that have a fiscal note. And the other half of our recommendations require that. Specifically, there are brilliant recommendations about building systems, right? We're talking about the warm line. We're talking about decision tools. We're talking about staffing mandated reporting consultations. We're talking about training at a level that we don't have prepared today, right? A level of training that would require tremendous input, expertise, and implementation and money, right? I received a brief just a day ago that we have a $1 billion deficit in our state, and that there will be no new money spent, but rather there will be budget cuts. And many who are expert on this issue compare this to our COVID year when we talk about revenues that have been dwindling. Revenues have dwindled in this state for different reasons than back in 2021, 20. But nonetheless, it's where we are. And so all of us who run state agencies have been cautioned to be aware that we should watch our budget asks, and more importantly, you just not only will not get anything, you may likely be reverting some money somewhere. So that is where we sit, unfortunately, on the heels of this group. And so I think what you can anticipate is that there will be legislation moving forward. It may or may not include all recommendations, right? Those are not our choices. And that the statutory changes, I feel very strongly, will gain their momentum and move forward. The system changes are the harder piece. And I think that's the part where we have to remain engaged as a group, not to let them die. Just because these changes may not necessarily be funded this year doesn't mean we can't be creative. And that's what we've been talking about sort of within my organization is, what do we do to create some placeholders, right? What can we do to start moving these projects forward? Is it a pilot project versus an entire state rollout? Is it a group that comes together and really starts putting meat on the bones of this notion of warm lines? where we come together and we actually sit down and start figuring out all those details versus having the luxury of hiring a third-party expert this year, right? These things can be and both. And so we're thinking creatively. We would encourage all of your thoughts. If we can't just go out and fund a new project, then how is it that we can keep the momentum going and keep it alive? All of you are experts here. You've been in this business a very long time. Legislation is a marathon. It is not a sprint. I have worked on projects that have taken us 6 years to get to a finish line, and we're still tweaking them year to year, right? So some of these recommendations, I think we can anticipate. We're looking at a 3 to 5 year runway. That's okay. That's all right. We're not going anywhere, right? Right? I need head nods. Yes, we're not going anywhere. And so the question is, where do those bigger system recommendations go? How do we begin to lay that foundation and then ultimately deal with the funding issues? So that is the picture that I see today. For our part at the CPO, we will absolutely keep you engaged in the following. As soon as we have additional conversations with legislators, which we weren't able to solidify that because we didn't know who was going to be in what seat up until last night. So one, we will be regaining and rehabbing conversations with them. To the extent that there is legislation proposed, not proposed, we will keep you posted on that. We will supply you with a copy of that legislation if and when we get to that point. And we will certainly keep you advised at least of the initial stakeholder process. We won't be notifying this entire group of an ongoing stakeholder process simply because we don't have the resources. But again, all of you are professionals and you followed legislation for years and you know how to do that, right? And of course, if you do have questions, you can always call Brian or myself at any time. But we will definitely keep you all updated in all of those things that are going to be happening in probably the next 3 months or so. So count on us to do that. And just count on the fact that we also plan, and Brian and I have already been working on this report, really to continue to push in this report, like we just did in our last task force, that this group should be the group that is brought in addition to whomever else might be interested, but this group is a critical group to remain involved. And we're putting that in the report along with our recommendations so that, our legislative friends, and they know this, but, we have a ready-made group here. We have folks who can help answer your questions if you have concerns about recommendations, or if you need more content behind those recommendations, legal language, right? We have a group here. And we encourage you to use them. So in addition to that push and the push by our office to continue to inform you of where we're headed, there will be other opportunities to be engaged, and we will let you know as that rolls out. I think that's what I have in terms of next steps. It doesn't sound very solid at some level, but on the other hand, it's really solid. You have all created a roadmap for the General Assembly, which I have every reason to believe they will respect and they will implement to the best of their abilities. When we run task force like this and when we have the type of voting process we've had, this was the stakeholdering process in essence for any future legislation, and that brings them tremendous comfort and confidence in moving ahead and actually drafting legislation and pursuing it with their colleagues as well. So I'm happy to take any questions about that, sort of those next steps and where we go. Kathy.
So to that end, I'm wondering if, I'm assuming that given the breadth of this group and the passion of this group and the hard work everyone's committed, there may be folks that are thinking about, are there ways that their work, things they're connected to, their organizations might be able to step in if legislative funding is not available, to think about seeking other funding and supporting some of the aspects. Do you have any thoughts, or does the group have any thoughts about ways to tap back into this group if someone is thinking about doing that in a way that could be, I'm just thinking about, like, if there are some of those ideas that are going on, is there a value to not, is there a value to the support of this group in thinking about ways to do this outside of legislation because of the potential funding challenges?
I just have a quick note from the training perspective. As you know, the training for mandatory reporting is currently provided through CWTS at the Kemp Center. That's been a training that we've had on our books for a long time. It's one of the oldest trainings in our catalog. And so it's definitely in need of an update. I would imagine that in the next year or so, we'll be reaching out to all of you. We have your names now and your interest and your expertise about that redesign of the training, because that's going to take a village. And particularly in a year when funding isn't looking like we're going to be able to, hire some big media conglomerate to do the training. We'll be kind of scrapping it together with our current resources. It'll be so key and so important to have all of your voices around that table as we're developing that training, because it's one thing to create all these changes in practice and legislation, but it's another to try to convey those to another bunch of folks. And I'd be remiss to let go of this this group really quickly, since I think that you will be the stakeholder group that will make the most difference in formulating those trainings, especially.
Thanks, Ida. Whoops, I'm not sure who that was. Yeah, thank you, Ida. And I appreciate you already flagging that opportunity. And just to circle back to Kathy's question, right, is ideas may not be present in our brains today, but I would encourage all of us to be thinking just really outside of the box. What are the other ways that we can continue to work together? And how can you support that? Maybe you want to support an upcoming meeting for this group, right? And want us to start broaching, an issue. Maybe it is, I'll just keep going back to the warm line, right? Because part of that recommendation really talked about the use of existing Colorado resources, right? And figuring out how do you create a warm line in light of that. I know we have our family resource centers here, and right. So I just encourage you to think about your role, where you sit, your resources, and how we might continue to work together in a way that may not be as straightforward as a piece of legislation and funding. Gina, if you want to come off mute, I see a comment by you as well.
Yeah, one of the things that fluttered to the top for us, right, was to find out, is there a hotline that applies to kiddos in our jurisdiction, seeing as how that became a huge issue in a lot of these discussions, and especially in what actions can happen out of these recommendations and how they would apply. Just to kind of close those gaps that I feel I had kept talking about, even in our hotline here in our state. I've tried it too before, and it's not the greatest for our community and for our kiddos. So I was able to track down if there was a hotline that was specific to our community, and it comes out of Albuquerque because that's where our law enforcement and investigations comes out of, which is odd, right? Because we're in Colorado. So I was able to identify, like, that might be a weird system recognition process that might need to happen. But I did call it, I did confirm. And so I think that, again, we are able to identify these weird complexities that were probably hindering a lot of smoother ways, right, to inform and report about children's safety. So I'm so happy to be connected with folks to be able to do that. So I'll do that, Crystal Allen. But yeah, so there is a hotline that is specific to Indian children, and our service area is included in the Albuquerque headquarters for DOI BIA. So yeah.
Great. Thank you for that information, Gina. Yes, and we would love anything you want to pass on to us.
Perfect.
Great. Any other thoughts or questions this morning?
I'll just share that, there is a new equity lead at the Division of Child Welfare there in Colorado, Vanessa Durantes. And I know one of the things that she is working on pursuant to legislation is better tracking of the race and ethnicity of kids that are referred and then come into the child welfare system. And that's related to one of the recommendations in the task force, and a big effort of most trainings for professionals is about being open and having families tell you who they are and being able to correct it later. So I appreciated the work that you have, the recommendations you have on that. And we've seen some examples of excellent training in other states on this topic.
Great. Thank you, Crystal. These are all great resources. Fantastic. All right, friends. Well, I don't see any other hands up. Again, just my deepest thanks. Thank you from our CPO team to all of you, and you will be hearing from us. You will get some more information from us, and we continue to keep you updated on where we're headed. So that's what I've got, Trace.
Thanks, Stephanie. Last note from me is that with that slate of approvals that we're going to need from you all, one is please do that, which would be helpful for us just from a process perspective. And the second is we're going to be sending out a survey with some more kind of intentional questions just to get your feedback around this process as a whole, and not going to require your name on it. It's just for internal purposes for both the CPO team and the Keystone team, just to give us some honest feedback. How did this process work for you? What worked for you? What didn't work for you? What would you love to see in a group like this moving forward? That sort of thing. So as we know, the work continues in other spaces. We just really appreciate your honest and candid feedback. And so just want to say thank you in advance for that. So that will come in the next couple of days as we wrap up our minutes and our summaries and get those out to you. So thanks in advance for that. Other than that, I think we are good to go. So again, thank you all deeply for your time, your commitment, and please reach out if you ever need anything. And we hope to see you more soon around. All right, y'all, take care.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.